Okay, so today we're diving into something really important, something that affects so many people, but often stays kind of hidden.
Yeah, just beneath the surface, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about learning differences.
Exactly. And we're doing a deep dive based on some really compelling source material we've looked at.
Yeah, it's a great report. And it really goes beyond just, the academic side of
Yeah.
things, dyslexia, dyscalculia, the usual suspects.
hmm
It digs into the psychosocial side, the emotional landscape.
That's the core of it. We want to really unpack that emotional world for people with learning differences, understand the hidden toll, on self-perception, relationships, well-being.
And what real support actually looks like. Holistic support.
Right, because the impact, it's not just about grades, is it? The sources make that so clear.
Absolutely not. It's about how those academic struggles can just chip away at self-esteem.
Yeah.
And the link to anxiety, to depression,
hmm
it's strong, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect.
And the social side, too, often overlooked.
Definitely. Plus, this really damaging cycle of discouragement that can really take hold.
And it's not just kids, right? The research shows this stuff can stick around deep into adulthood if it's not addressed.
Yeah, the echoes can be long.
But there's this fundamental point, and it comes up again and again in the sources. Learning differences are about how the brain works, how it processes things.
Crucially, not about how smart someone is.
Exactly. That distinction is, well, it's everything. It's key to breaking down stigma and seeing the actual person.
So let's define it a bit. Learning differences, or sometimes called learning disabilities in a clinical context, they're basically neurodevelopmental variations in brain processing.
How someone takes in, understands, or uses certain kinds of information.
Right. And that point you just made, totally unrelated to overall intelligence. The sources hammer this home. The brain just functions differently, period.
And we see it manifest in different ways, don't we?
Like dyslexia, challenges with reading, spelling, calculia, that's the math side.
Dysgraphia for writing difficulties.
Dyspraxia involves motor skills.
hmm
Dysphagia or aphasia affecting language, auditory processing, visual processing. Lots of variations.
So the academic stuff is often what gets noticed first. But the sources argue really strongly that the psychosocial impact, the emotional side, that's often much deeper, more pervasive.
Yeah, the report points to significant co-occurring mental health issues,
Yeah.
often more than one,
And the worrying part, how often these emotional needs get missed.
or misunderstood. Maybe just chalked up to the learning difference itself.
Instead of being seen as separate needs that require their own support.
Exactly. And that leads to, well, a lot of needless suffering, frankly.
Which brings us to that time before diagnosis. That sounds incredibly difficult. Society tends to link school performance directly to intelligence, doesn't it?
It does, and that creates this real vulnerability. If a kid's struggling and everyone around them kind of equates that with being slow or not smart,
They can start believing it themselves before anyone explains why it's hard.
it's described in one source as this silent yet potent incubator for distress. You're trying hard, maybe harder than others, but you don't know why it's not working.
That must be so confusing and lonely.
Or absolutely. It often spirals into self-blame, anxiety, this invisible struggle, as they call it, feeling like you're failing for some unknown reason.
And that plants those negative seeds, right? I'm stupid, I'm lazy.
Exactly. And the research suggests those negative beliefs formed early on can be really stubborn, really hard to shake, even after a diagnosis comes along and explains things.
Wow. So that emotional toll starts early. Let's dig into that emotional landscape more. Self-esteem, self-efficacy. That seems like a major casualty.
It really does. It stems from that constant experience,
Yeah.
putting in massive effort, way more than peers for, well, often less reward academically.
That high effort, low reward dynamic.
It's stained over time, yeah. It just wears down your sense of worth, your belief in your own competence.
And kids internalize it. I'm just not smart. I can't do this.
And seeing peers grasp things easily, that social comparison makes it even worse.
There's that quote from Tina Coleman.
Oh yeah, it's powerful. For a child with a learning disability, their entire self-concept can be affected. They might be wondering who they are or why something is so hard when it's not for other kids.
That just captures the confusion so well.
It does. And some LDs are specifically linked to low self-esteem, like dyscalculia, or the frustration with dysgraphia, really hitting confidence hard.
And it's not just about failing, is it? The research says it's the gap. The perceived unfairness between the huge effort and the disappointing result.
Precisely. That's what creates that sense of futility, like why bother?
Which sounds like the perfect breeding ground for learn and helplessness.
Exactly. That belief that your actions just don't impact the outcome. Devastating for self-efficacy.
And it doesn't just stay internal, does it? It affects behavior.
Right. It fuels this self-fulfilling prophecy. If you feel incapable, you start avoiding challenges.
Not just homework, but maybe trying new hobbies or even social stuff.
Yeah, anything where you might risk failing or feeling inadequate again.
So you limit your chances to actually build skills, get better, feel good about something.
Which just confirms the original negative belief.
Yeah.
See, I told you I couldn't do it. It's a really vicious cycle.
Okay, let's link this to anxiety and depression now. The connection seems really strong according to the sources.
Incredibly strong. Significantly higher rates of both in individuals with LDs.
The numbers are pretty stark, aren't they? Something like 70% report more anxiety symptoms.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe 20% actually meet the diagnostic criteria for an anxiety disorder.
Wow.
And you see specific links, too. Dyslexia, definitely associated with higher risk. ADHD, which often comes alongside LDs, adds its own layer with executive function issues and maybe facing more criticism.
And dyscalculia, tied to math anxiety, obviously, but also broader anxiety and depression.
Right. And it's not just one thing causing the other. It's cyclical,
Hmm.
bidirectional.
Meaning anxiety makes the learning harder.
Exactly. Anxiety messes with your focus, your working memory, processing speed, all crucial for learning. So the anxiety makes the LD symptoms worse.
And the struggle with learning fuels more anxiety and depression.
It's a feedback loop. Like test anxiety can actually sit between general anxiety and how well you perform academically.
The long-term data is sobering, too. Higher psychological distress, depression, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts reported by adults with LDs.
And sometimes, disturbingly, those issues can actually get worse in adulthood if they haven't been properly supported earlier.
That brings up how these things might look different, right? Not always obvious sadness or worry.
Yeah, the masked presentations. Sometimes it comes out as irritability, defiance, acting out, being the class clown.
Trying to cope with the frustration or pain.
Maladaptive coping, basically.
Yeah.
And the danger there is misdiagnosis.
Focusing on the behavior, not the root cause, the distress, the unaccommodated LD.
Yeah. And then there's the social piece, adding another layer. Labeling theory comes up.
How does that work?
Well, the idea is that the stigma itself being labeled, facing lower expectations, being treated differently, that independently contributes to anxiety and depression. It's not just the learning difficulty, it's how society reacts to it.
Wow, so being excluded or teased adds this whole extra burden.
A significant extra burden,
Yeah.
which really highlights the challenges in the social world.
Let's get into that. Social skills seem to be a key area.
They can be.
Yeah.
Challenges with social cognition, reading nonverbal cues like facial expressions, tone of voice.
Especially with nonverbal learning disorder, NVLD.
Yeah, that's a classic feature of NVLD. Often strong verbally, but weaker on the visual, spatial, social, emotional processing side. But you see variations of these challenges across other LDs too.
And if you have a language-based LD, that obviously makes social communication harder.
Right. Understanding jokes, sarcasm, keeping up with fast group chat. That could be tough with language processing disorder or auditory processing disorder.
Then there's social problem solving, figuring out social situations, other people's perspectives.
Understanding social dynamics, maybe anticipating consequences, theory of mind challenges can pop up.
And even LDs that aren't directly social can have ripple effects, like avoiding math games if you have dyscalculia.
Exactly. Or just low self-esteem, making it hard to put yourself out there trying to make friends.
Emotional regulation, too, that can play a part. Impulsivity, maybe?
Definitely. Especially with co-occurring ADHD, difficulties managing emotions can lead to behaviors that, unfortunately, strain relationships.
But the crucial thing this sources stress is, it's often not a lack of wanting to connect.
No, that's so important. It's usually underlying processing issues, things happening too fast, misinterpreting cues, language barriers, making social interaction genuinely overwhelming or confusing. They want connection, but the how is the struggle.
That sounds incredibly isolating and sets up another cycle.
Yeah, repeated negative experiences,
Yeah.
social anxiety, withdrawal.
And avoiding social situations means you don't get the practice to improve,
Exactly. The gap widens.
which leads to peer relationships and isolation. That academic frustration can spill over into social reputation.
Higher loneliness is reported frequently among teens with LDs.
They might stick to smaller groups.
Sometimes, which can be good for belonging, but might limit broader interactions. Social rejection is highlighted as a really critical problem.
Yeah, you hear about kids hiding their struggles, like with dyslexia, just trying to fit in. That can't feel good.
No, that lack of authenticity is tough.
Yeah.
And not being integrated with peers contributes back to that negative self-view.
There are specific examples, too, like kids with APD being bullied more often.
Yeah, or just academic performance being used as social currency, leading to marginalization.
But there's hope here, too. Psychosocial interventions can help with loneliness and self-esteem.
Definitely. Okay, let's pivot slightly to motivation and engagement, especially at school.
The cognitive challenges themselves can zap motivation, can't they?
Directly, research shows less persistence, less intrinsic drive for tasks that feel hard or painful.
And that cycle again. Repeated failure plus huge effort equals frustration, resentment.
And the belief that success just isn't possible for them. So you get aversion avoiding writing if you have dysgraphia, avoiding math with dyscalculia,
And this is where adults can misunderstand, right? Seeing it as laziness or defiance.
which is so damaging. Because often the lack of motivation isn't who they are, it's a learned response.
A protective mechanism, avoiding the expected pain of failing again.
Precisely. And that directly hits academic persistence. Motivation down, engagement down, performance down.
Though the sources say just boosting engagement isn't the whole answer for LD students.
Right, you have to address the underlying processing issues too. And external factors matter, like remote learning being extra tough for kids needing structure.
So it's this really complex system. Negative feelings deplete cognitive resources,
Which lowers motivation, lowers engagement, worsens performance.
which reinforces the negative feelings, which crushes motivation further. Ugh.
It's a tough loop. And the clear takeaway for support. You have to address both skills and the emotional motivational side together.
Can't just drill academics if the student is overwhelmed by anxiety or feels helpless.
Exactly. You need those holistic models.
Let's quickly touch on nuances. Does it matter if the LD is more obvious or hidden?
The sources suggest it does shape the type of impact. Visible issues, messy handwriting with dysgraphia, maybe clumsiness with dyspraxia might get direct judgment, teasing, pity. Just be neater.
Whereas hidden challenges APD, math anxiety might be misinterpreted. Not trying, defiant.
Both are harmful, just in different ways.
And getting a diagnosis isn't always straightforward.
So, the diagnostic odyssey. It can take longer for some LDs than others.
And that delay,
Yeah.
it just lets those negative patterns, low self-esteem, anxiety, coping styles get more entrenched, makes support harder later on.
Points to real systemic issues in recognizing and resourcing different LDs.
Okay, so all of this screams. Support needs to be way broader than just academics.
Absolutely. It's an imperative. Shifts from just fixing academic problems to comprehensive psychosocial support. Emotional well-being isn't an add-on. It's the foundation for learning.
So step one is recognizing the distress, even if it's masked as bad behavior.
And not just blaming everything on the LD. Recognizing when separate mental health support is needed too.
It sounds like empathy is crucial. Understanding their subjective experience, what's it actually feel like for them?
Yes. Are they feeling dumb, anxious, isolated? And explaining the LD, your brain works differently. It's not about being smart. That's incredibly validating.
Shifts the narrative from, I'm broken.
Totally. And simple validation from adults. I see this as frustrating. It's okay to feel anxious. That's huge. It reduces shame, builds trust. Dismissal just makes it worse.
What about parents? Their feelings matter too.
Big time. Kids absorb parental anxiety or disappointment. Supporting the parent's education, managing their own emotions is key for a supportive home.
Okay, so foundation is understanding, validation. Then how do we build resilience?
Self-advocacy is huge. Teaching them to understand their needs, ask for accommodations, gives them agency, control, reduces that helplessness.
Every time they successfully advocate, it builds confidence.
Right. Plus, cognitive strategies challenging that negative self-talk.
And practical coping skills, relaxation, problem solving.
Time management, recognizing emotional triggers, knowing how to ask for help, modeling for younger kids.
Supportive environments are key too, family, school, community.
Warmth at home, safety and accommodations at school, positive feedback for effort, mentors, support groups, reducing isolation.
And specific interventions, like therapy.
Yeah, psychosocial programs help self-esteem, loneliness. CBT is effective for thoughts and feelings. OP, social skills training, compensatory strategies, tailored approaches.
And this ties into growth mindset, believing you can improve.
Yes, fostering that belief, praising the process, the effort, the resilience, not just the grade.
And crucially, finding and nurturing strengths outside academics.
Absolutely vital. Sports, art, music, tech, leadership, whatever it is. Giving them places to succeed and feel competent builds confidence that can counteract the academic struggles.
So it's a whole shift from fixing deficits to a holistic, strengths-based view.
Building on talents, fostering resilience, valuing effort. That allows for real learning and well-rounded development. Resilience isn't just toughness, it's a positive identity.
Looking long-term now, these impacts do last if not addressed right.
The data's clear. Higher distress, depression, anxiety in adulthood, sometimes even more pronounced than in adolescence.
And real-world consequences, education, jobs.
Lower attainment sometimes, underemployment, financial instability can follow.
And this is important, it's not destiny.
Not at all. That's the hopeful message. With the right support, academic and psychosocial resilience, self-awareness, coping strategies, people can thrive, achieve amazing things.
We hear those success stories, right? People with dyslexia leveraging their strengths, finding supportive environments.
Those stories are so important. They show what's possible.
We need to watch out for transition points, though. College, work.
Yeah, when those childhood supports might fade. That's why skills for ongoing self-advocacy are crucial.
It's interesting that younger adults sometimes report less distress. Maybe because support is still there?
Potentially. Highlights the need for transition planning.
And this idea of emotional scarring.
Those deeply ingrained negative self-perceptions, maladaptive coping habits from years of struggle, they can leave marks, affecting careers, relationships, life satisfaction.
Like being called lazy, leading to imposter syndrome years later.
Exactly. It just underscores the profound need for early, continuous psychosocial support. Not just fixing the reading, but building the person.
So wrapping this all up, the main takeaway, learning differences are so much more than academic hurdles.
The emotional, social, motivational impact is huge, often hidden.
And support has to be holistic, integrated. You can't separate academics from well-being.
They depend on each other.
But there's real hope. With the right approach, identification, tailored support, resilience building, strong systems, individuals can absolutely thrive.
Their unique perspectives are often assets.
So the call to action is for everyone, parents, educators, clinicians, all of us, to adopt this nuanced, empathetic view.
Recognize the distress, validate feelings, provide that multifaceted support.
It's a societal shift, really, away from seeing LDs as failures towards seeing them as variations needing comprehensive support.
Requires collaboration across the board.
And the final thought the report leaves us with, investing in this early, holistic support. It's not just the right thing to do.
It's a societal investment. Think about the potential we unlock in our communities, in our future, if we truly nurture every individual, understanding that how a brain learns is just one part of who they are and who they can become.
That's definitely something to reflect on.